All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Craigmile. You may have already seen this once in the live video. The record button wasn't pressed. So we're going to be redoing this for everybody and putting it out on the internet. What we're looking at today is the 4 different techniques that are out there for proning your ARDS or highly dependent ICU patient. Full disclosure and disclaimer, this may not be the best way to be using the products that we're going to be talking about today. It may not be under the manufacturer's recommendation. We're just trying to use what we have to safely prone those patients without having to manually lift them every time we need to turn them over. So with that, you should always follow your hospital's protocols for patient care. And make sure you practice this before you try to do it on an actual patient. And we're going to look at 4 proning techniques using an air transfer and repositioning mat. That would be any air inflation device. Make sure that air inflation device is breathable, as the patient's going to be laying on top of that, either supine or prone. That breathability is very important. It should be greater than the breathability of the mattress or that moisture evaporation rate. Secondly, you want to make sure that you have 2 air transfer devices to do it. Next one's going to be repositioning sheets. We're going to show you how to use it with a lift. We should be using a ceiling lift, but we do not have one at the present time in the sim lab, so we're going to be using a floor lift and showing you how to prone those patients in that direction. Thirdly, we're going to be using a slide sheet and the wrap-up method. And then finally, we're going to be just using it manually so you can see the differences. It's kind of a good, better, best program. I found this on the internet, and I think it's a really good thing to be ready for. It's the 5 Ps of proning. Prepare, make sure you have everything you're going to need to prone that patient before you start. The plan, who's going to do where, how are we going to do it, who's in charge throughout the process. Physically perform the task, count down, turn, prone, protect. Check all the pressure areas, make sure there's nothing entrapped. Do your Q2 on the turns, and then perfect. You're going to put the pillows center the patient, put everything in place to make sure those tubes are clear, they're not any pressure points, they're not lying anything. With that, let me introduce our guests, our helpers here. This is the first, well, now the second time using Zoom meeting. So let me go here, stop share. And there we go. So Mark is playing patient A. He's a physical therapist. Ashley Niebuhr is, move this over this way, is one of our resident PT Safe Patient Handling champions. Sasha Latvala, am I ever pronouncing that right? Is a Safe Patient Handling professional from Rochester, and Diana Brennan is a ICU nurse here locally. So what we're going to do first, our patient is on a hover mat, they're intubated, they're unconscious. Perfect. We're going to use a separate surface to prone them. What we found is by using a separate surface, it's the same technique we use in an OR. So Sasha's going to be our anesthesiologist. We're going to move that up. And we're going to do a standard lateral transfer like we would normally do. Feet first, then head first, never straight across. Ironically, the reason we go is perfect. Perfect. Always go feet first and head first. Ironically, the reason we do that is so we don't prone our patient, plus it's a more posture correct way of transferring. So always feet first, then head first. Normally, the person next to the hover mat's in charge. In this case, because there's an intubation pill, or he's intubated, the person running the airway is going to be in charge. And she's going to say, Chris, turn it on. Chris, turn it on. We're going to slowly inflate it first, make sure it's centered on the patient. You're going to see it wrap around, slowly lift them off the surface. Now we're going to hit the brown button to do the transfer. Perfect. As you notice, they'll go very quickly. Now we're going to prep this surface for him to become prone back on. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a second hover mat. And this hover mat, and some of the newer hover mat or air transfer devices out there, I apologize for using that. That's good. Have anchors, and those anchors are great because they can anchor right to the frame of the bed. And what it'll do is when you put the bed in reverse Trendelenburg, it's going to keep that mat from sliding down. So depending on where you need it, depending on where their mass is going to be where you're going to need to set your pillows up. In this case, he's got a lot of it, chest mass. Well, what's going to happen is we're going to inflate the device. One of the biggest reasons we say always go feet first, then head first, or with an angle with an air transfer device is because if you go straight across and that patient's heavy, they'll actually prone themselves onto that surface. We're going to do that this time on purpose. So we cut the handles already underneath. Oh, we forgot to do the pillowcase. A very neat trick of what we do in the OR is the use of a pillowcase to lock that arm in place. So what you're going to do is tuck this under his body. Take the tubing, his arm and everything else, place this over the top, and then tuck this back again. And what this is going to do, it's going to eliminate the need for the person on this side to hold that arm in place so it doesn't get underneath them. What we'll do is be able to, when we turn him, he's going to turn and prone himself right centered onto this surface. So, Sasha's in charge again.
Let's turn it on.
We're going to slowly inflate to make sure it's centered. And then we'll fully inflate. And very simply, that patient is prone. We're going to put him in the swimmer's position and make sure his arm is on the right. If you're using a pillow or a face wedge, one of the foam blocks, what we would then do is slide it up so he's centered. The other thing that we can do is go ahead and just climb over for me, Mark. Your weight. I'm going to show you. You just slide over on the other surface. The hover mat you're going to can actually be pulled down to when they're prone, it's just at his shoulders, so you can have that face mask without the hover mat in place. You can prone him so he's higher up on the bed. All right, move back over. Thanks, buddy. Don't we wish all of our patients can do that? Now, to supine him out, we're going to raise the bed up. Perfect. I'm going to go higher here, Sasha. And we're going to do everything in the exact opposite. So we're going to laterally transfer him over. Go ahead and grab onto the mat. Sasha, you're going to say, Chris, turn it on.
Turn it on.
Now we're just going to get the second hover mat. Just lower the surface. You lower this one down a little bit. So now when we supine him back, when we turn him back to supine, we're going to follow the exact same thing. We can raise and lower the body as much as we can. That's lunges. Just remember, he's on pillows. So when we start, when his body gets to that point of turning, he will go relatively quick, especially if they have a large thigh mass or a large abdomen. Okay, Chris, turn it on.
Turn it on.
Then we do it, and we got our patient. Now, that's the simplest way of what we found to do that, and having a second surface is such a huge help. Because you can control all the lines, the hoses, you can verify everything's in place. You can go as fast or as slow as you want, and it doesn't take a lot of team members to do it. So if there's only one person, or I'm sorry, 200 pounds, you're gonna need 3 people. So one person on the airway, 2 people to do the proning. Of course, you're gonna have more people in the room than that as needed. Let's slide this out of here. I always have this rule: 200 pounds, 300 pounds, 3 people, 400 pounds, 4 people, 500 pounds, 5 people. If that patient is 350, 400 pounds or greater, you want to use 2 air canisters, 1 on either side. It doubles the air pressure inside of your air device, making it much easier to move that patient. In this situation, though, we don't have a second stretcher, so we're going to actually move him in place just using 1 surface and using a hover mat to do it. So the way, I'm sorry, 2 hover mats, you're right. 2 hover mats to do it. The way this works, we're going to use the hover mats. We got the sheets. So first, what we're going to do is put the hover mat underneath them. So to do that, we're going to start here at the head. This is a minimum of 4 people. Start there for me. I'm going to get you to go ahead and grab the mat. You're going to say, Chris, turn it on.
Chris, turn it on.
Perfect. And 1, 2, 3. So we now have applied the second mat. So when we throw him, we can then inflate it and then supine him back all in one place. So we're going to put a handrail up. Which way would you guys like to turn it? Excellent. Your handrail up will turn towards us. We're going to get our pillows in place. Or ready to be in place. Where did our pillowcase go? Here. Perfect. Yep. So we're going to apply that pillowcase to lock that arm and all that tubing so we don't have to worry. Thanks, buddy. So when we do this, it's going to be a very slow process. We're going to inflate the hover mat and slowly slide him across. Turn him directly on the pillows, directly in place, and then be able to position him so he's safe. He's going to be here and ready to go. Again, if you're going to be using a head pillow, one of the open head pillows, you would slide him up the bed so when we prone him, he'd be prone with his head slightly over the top of the bed. Of course, you're going to need the heads of the bed, the headboard off every time we do this. So you guys got a hold of it. We're going to go nice and slow. You're going to say, Chris, turn it on.
Chris, turn it on.
Make sure you're setting on that. And the pillows are centered, and now we can set on the mat. You can inflate the hover mat and center. Put your handrail down for me. We just use the hover mat to center him back on this surface. So we will do the swimmer's position with his arms. Arm up. Excellent. Slide his legs. And when we inflate the hover mat, we can slide him more centered. You guys ready?
Chris, turn it on.
Thank you very much. So if we need to move the pillows or anything, we can push down and turn him to apply the pillows, and we can actually add more pillows or remove more pillows as needed.
The key to that is making sure that when you slide that way initially, you go far enough and slide off. So you
Right.
allow more.
Mark just brings up the point, if you didn't hear that, you have to make sure you come across far enough to get him up far enough to make sure he lands back into the center of the next surface. So you really have to do it, and that's why we put that arm up, just to protect him, to keep him turning in the same place. Again, not ideal, better than trying to manually, physically grab him, which we'll show you in a couple minutes. Manually grab him, turn him manually. To supine him back, we'll do the same thing. That's ready. So we're going to get our other hover mat and put it in place. We're going to put the handrail down. So again, what we're going to do is inflate this first hover mat. And then bring and slide that hover mat into place. You guys ready?
Turn it on.
Thank you very much. So again, it's a super easy way to apply a secondary hover mat. We're going to put the handrail up on that side. We're going to take that arm, again, lock it into place. You're not good at this whole don't help program.
He's ticklish too.
Luckily, we don't have to listen to that. So again, when we do this, you can go as fast or as slow as you want. Tuck those under so you can grab it. And again, we're just flying him as far that way as we can so he's lying center when he comes off the mat. All right? Ready?
Let's turn it on.
It's centered right onto the next surface. Hold on a minute. So the next, have everything on air transfer tools? Awesome. So the next thing we're going to work on is repositioning sheets and using your full patient flip. Now you're going to put a sheet on that first. And can you lower the bed for us? So this is making the assumption that your full, that your ICU has XY ceiling lift tracks is the best case scenario. You can do this with a full patient lift, portable full patient lift like this, but it is not nearly as efficient. Excellent.
If you do it with your floor-based lifts, you're going to have to put your beds lower in order to get enough clearance. Which is what we just did and why we did that.
So the second piece to this is going to take 2 repositioning slings for this to work. So what we're actually going to do is lift the patient up and apply the first sling in place. So we're hooking him all up. We're going to hook both ends. We're going to raise him off the surface.
And you're not going to hook the head because we want to keep his airway open. So we're just going to connect from the neck down.
And of course, when you do this, normally we'd have the head of the bed up because we'd be in the sitting position because we're going to physically lift him off the surface. Because we're doing the full lift. Go up a little bit. And and this will keep him from conceptualizing backwards. So grab the white one. Yes. When we pick him up, so when we turn him, we're not going to use it. White one. See how that looks. You may have to tighten it up, which is fine. Want that for me? So we're going to raise this up. Or just lift him off this surface so we can get the repositioning sheet out from underneath, in place underneath. That should keep him from going super tremendous. All right, he's off the surface. Wonderful. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Again, with the ceiling lift, this is a much easier process. Hey, don't worry. Good. Check with your patient who is unconscious. No, I'm kidding. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to disconnect just one side of this. We're going to apply slide sheets underneath. Can you lower the head of the bed? Which way do we want to turn it?
This way, since I already took mine off.
You can do that. So this, we're going to leave the head open so you can keep track of the airway. Again, because of the height of the physical. Yep, perfect. This way. We're going to tighten this up, and then we're going to apply the slings underneath. Now, what the slings do is they're going to keep it from taking that bottom sheet.
So the layers go repositioning sling, then your two slide sheets, and then your top repositioning sling that your patient is on.
Correct. You go right under the skull of the bat. Excellent. So what's going to happen now is we lift this, we're going to slide him towards us, bring him back in the middle. And we've got the pillows ready to go right here. You guys ready?
And what Ashley and I are doing is we're just anchoring down the bottom repositioning sheet so that that doesn't go with it.
Correct. Slide over. And we're not lifting, we're just sliding and holding him in position.
You're going to keep going until your patient is right up against that rail, the bed rail.
So this is where we end up having just a small height issue when you have your floor-based lift. Is with a ceiling lift, you can get that higher, so you can actually do the full proning thing. This is as high as our floor lift goes. All right, so we're going to just turn them in place. And yeah, use that slide sheet, and you can remove those slings. Then we're just going to turn him to make sure that he's centered on those pillows properly. Let me get this out of the way. And then do this. Just make sure we can pull those pillows to make sure there aren't any wrinkles long term underneath. That good? Miss anything? Swimmers position. Excellent. Why don't we climb off and then we'll do the sheets. So the next piece is, let's say you don't have access to a lift or a slide sheet, or I'm sorry, a access to yeah, we're gonna get this up.
Do you want to go back? Yeah, we're gonna go.
I'm sorry.
Come
Yes.
back.
My bad. You're absolutely correct. Looking back, huh? So, question for you guys. What do you think the best way is having him prone? I don't know if we should be lifting him off the surface to get this. You agree, Mark? Correct.
I think what we did earlier was the right way as you start to turn it.
Turn and tuck. Perfect. I'll give this over to you. We're going to now connect to that second bottom repositioning
No,
sheet.
because we need to have a clearance for the lip.
In a perfect world, we would be working at a much higher angle.
If you were using ceiling lifts, your bed would be at a more optimal height because you would have a different effective lifting range.
Correct. And this lift in particular, because of the scale, is not optimal because it adds another 6 inches of that lack of height. We're going to hook him up. Yes. Use the patient as a source for this scenario. Now, we came in from that side, so we just started to slide him over, apply the slide sheets underneath, hold that under with him as we turned, and then he supined directly onto that repositioning sheet. So we're going to start the lift process. Get ready to move. We got that right now. We're going to put the slide sheets underneath the patient all the way across. We're going to turn him and pull him over this way a little bit. 1, 2, 3, move. Split tie dynamic right with his hand for those straps so we can turn her up a little bit. Pulling this up a little bit. Apply your repositioning sheet in place. So now as we turn him, this is all going to kind of slide together. So we're going to do the exact same process. Pulling him back at us.
Making sure we're anchoring down that bottom repositioning sheet once again so that it doesn't go with everything else.
We didn't have. Oh. The side sheet should be between, that's why that's so hard. The side sheet needs to be between the two. Is yours between the two? Or underneath? So do that.
I got a space.
Okay. That should do it. So let's try and lift. You have that. Perfect. So if we go up now, that should stay in place a lot better because we're between the two repositioning sheets. All right, can I slide it my way? All right, we keep going up a little bit further, and then he will supine out. Right. So what? I guess we ought to be saying that more often. There is a person, somebody is always managing the airway in the patient's head, and somebody's always managing the tubes through this entire process. We're just doing it in a much quicker fashion to just show you the different options. But yes, there are people there to manage all of that space through the process. All right. Slide sheets?
I'm playing a dual role here.
Yes. Wonderful. So now my patient has decided they need to be intubated or they need to be thrown. And all we have access to in our facility is slide sheets. So how do we do that? What we're going to use is 3 flat sheets.
Don't have access to slide sheets.
What's that?
Don't have access.
No, we're going to do slide sheets. No, we're going to do.
Oh, so we haven't done slide sheets.
We haven't done something. That's it. Fitted. Make sure you use fitted and not flats. So we're going to put our.
Fitted.
I have them all, I ordered them.
Flat and not fitted.
Flat, not fitted.
Yes, flat and not fitted. Don't try a fitted sheet with this. If you don't know, flat sheets, believe it or not, are weight rated at 1,200 pounds, and some 1,500. But a 200 count bed linen is weight rated by the FDA at 1,200 pounds, which is always found amazing.
You want to make sure that you fold the top of the sheet down so that we're not covering the patient's face.
Right, on both. And then we're going to put a 3rd sheet over the top of these 2. Right, down, we're going to put our rails down. So what we're going to do first is you're going to take all 3 flat sheets and you're going to take the wrinkles out of them as best as possible, and you're going to roll them up like a taco. And then you're going to grab our slide sheets. Yeah, David. And we're going to slide them underneath. Now we're using tubular slide sheets for this task. You can use flat sheets. I tend to lean more towards the tubular just because when you have a tubular slide sheet, it's much easier because you're always losing those single sheets, and then staff will try to use it with one, which is a glorified draw sheet. By having the tubular, it will slide very easy on itself. So somebody's going to be controlling the airway. In this case, Mark's controlling his own airway. Congratulations, Mark. What we're going to be doing is we're going to go my way. Perfect. We're going to come across, up, and then over. So it's a 3-step process. So we're going to slide them my way first. 1, 2, 3, slide. We're going to slide them up onto this edge. 1, 2, 3, up. We're going to grab underneath. They're going to grab over top. And on the count of 3, we're going to go 1, 2, 3 over. 1, right? 1, 2, 3 over. And bring them back into position. Now that sliding and lifting still is a significant amount of force. It's not as significant as unfold that out. So you're going to take what you had folded in the flat sheet and unfold it over space. Again, if you were using one of the face cones, you'd be off the top of the bed, you'd be sliding him upward and then throwing him off. And somebody would be controlling that airway. Wonderful.
If you leave the slide sheet there, you can do that a little easier.
Yeah, and we put him in the swimmer's position. Excellent. We can move the pillows by lifting and pulling, gently picking up and sliding the pillows in place. And bringing his body and chest over as needed. Again, the number of pillows that you're going to use in the patient is all dependent on your hospital protocol. So to bring him back to supine now, we're going to bring his arm down. I love it when they help us like this. We're going to take that one flat sheet and go over the top. Roll it up. Again, how many people you should be having do this? Well, other than as many as possible. Ideal circumstances, you need at least 3 on either side, plus 1 managing the airway. Right. So on the count of 3, we're going to come my way. Count of 3, we're going to go up. And the count of 3, we're over. Ready? 1, 2, 3, over. 1, 2, 3, up. 1, 2, 3, back. doing, Mark? So that's how we do with slide sheets. The simplest, most effective way. Again, your first is your air transfer devices. Your second option is your repositioning sheet. And the third option is your slide sheets. Lastly, so if you have no other options, we're going to show you what and you guys have all seen the internet process of how you do this. It is not comfortable and it is not safe for the caregivers. But this is the safe, most effective way you can do this for your patients, which is we don't have any equipment. We're just going to wrap them and turn them. I think we can all say we do not recommend this at all. But again, if you have nothing, it's better you know how to do this versus grabbing the patient and just going for the big heave-ho. So it's very similar to the process we used with the slide sheet, other than we're eliminating the slide sheet. This is all a manual lift, and yet this is what most facilities presently do. So we went from best to better to, if you got no other options, this is the way to safely, for your patient, turn them, maybe not as safe for your caregivers. Really try to use as good a body mechanics as you possibly can. We're going to pull him our way. 1, 2, 3 to pull. Then we're going to bring him up. 1, 2, 3 up. And then we're going to bring him over. 1, 2, 3 over. We grab that bottom piece and we pull him into place. 1, 2, 3 over. It doesn't look terrible. We have to, there's a lot of fixing involved. You get in the swimmer position.
Heavier patient would be
A nightmare.
very difficult.
As Chris said, we would never recommend this as safe patient handling professionals, and this would be a more daunting task if it was a patient of size.
And with the tubes and airways, you want at least 6 people doing the turn, 1 person managing the airway at minimum. That good there? We don't have any questions because I didn't record the first time. So we're going to move on. Am I missing anything, ladies and gents?
Kind of like the same way we just,
Oh, yeah.
without slide.
Yes. I don't think we need to go through that process. But yes, you would cocoon them up and turn them back over the same way that you brought them this way. Just make sure that airway's open. And then, of course, with all 4 of these techniques, as soon as you get them over, you get them in place, your hospital protocol should be to reverse Trendelenburg. And again, with the air transfer devices or anything, the repose sheets that lock onto the surface, lock those at the head of the bed so the patient doesn't come downward towards the foot of the bed or need them to. With that, we're going to go to share screen. This. Some prone placement information. So I found this on a great website that had a whole list of things for proning. I thought it was important enough to add just because a lot of people don't know this. First and foremost, EKG leads come off the chest before you prone the patient. You turn that head every Q2, if not more, assuming the swimming position, checking your tubes, making sure the pressure relief, closing the eyes, the flexion of the ankles, Foley tubes, all those things that are important to keep the patient most comfortable, the blood flowing, and keep their joints in a safe position. But you can also, as you see at the bottom, the website you can go to has some great information on this. The other piece to this, outside of the proning, but some of the stuff we have to look at the safe patient handling end of this, is infection prevention, your morgue cadaver management. And then we did some Q&A. The infection prevention, if you have facilities that are terminally cleaning, meaning they're using the bioquil, hydrogen peroxide, UV, any of those things to terminally clean the inside of your patient care rooms, also do that to your safe patient handling space, or put those pieces of equipment in those rooms while they're being cleaned. The reason is we cannot get to a lot of the nooks and the crannies on our sit-to-stands and our full patient lifts. This allows us an ability to clean those things into those nooks and crannies and get them as clean as we possibly can. I would recommend doing these at least once a week at this point. With your ceiling lift systems, make sure you're pulling that strap all the way out of the ceiling lift system every time you change that room over. The reason is if you're lifting patients or using that for repositioning and anything gets on that strap, when you go to use it with your next patient, anything can fall off of that strap if that's not cleaned. The reusable patient care products, if it's not specifically stated that it's a wipeable with none of those nooks and crannies in it, between your precautionary patients, you need to launder that sling. There's no way to get into into a porous surface and terminally clean it without laundering that I'm aware of. As much as they say they are wipeable, a lot of them are wipeable to a point. If there's seams on it that are stitched, a lot of different scenarios, you want to make sure that that gets laundered. Single patient use and disposable products should be labeled with the patient's name. In the past, a lot of people have sent them home with the patient. Now, if they come back, they could be significantly contaminated, so you may not want to include sending those SPO products, single patient use products, home with your family members or with the patients. Mobile lift equipment. I am unaware of any mechanical lift or non-powered sit-to-stand or sit-to-stand lift company that does not allow you to clean that with your bleachable wipes. Now, if there's foam handles, you might want to avoid the foam handles with the bleachable wipes, but the rest of that surface, as far as I've ever seen, is wipeable with your bleach cavi wipes or with your hydrogen peroxide wipe, whatever it takes to make sure we're terminally cleaning those items. I will tell you that's completely unofficial. You have to follow your manufacturer's recommendation cleaning policies. If they say you can, of course you can't, but I would promote that as much as possible. Also, Amber Perez did a phenomenal presentation on emergency preparedness for safe patient handling that covered a number of different areas. It was very, very good. You may want to consider looking at that at some point because she did a phenomenal job with that. Yeah, please.
Infection prevention, make sure that when you're doing your straps on your ceiling lifts, you're also doing your calf straps on your sit-to-stand lifts as well as your foot plates. And then also making sure that you're following these infection protocols, not just because we're in a viral pandemic, but at all times. You just need to be more hypervigilant now.
Yes, that we should be doing that all the time, shouldn't we? It's in most of your policies, but are we doing as proactively as we should be? Probably not, up until now.
Don't put your slings over the top of your lifts.
Yeah. Reusable slings are so inexpensive at this point. There is very little reason not to have patient-specific reusable slings. If they're at $70 to $80, and you can then have them patient-specific and not have that cross-contamination fear. There's no reason to put other patients at risk if you're using it in that one and maybe fine. But then 2 days later, you find out that they test positive, but now you've put that on every other patient in that unit. And this is where I'm going to get a little dark for a moment, but it's really important because I think we're seeing this already in Europe. And New York City started planning as of yesterday by bringing in 12 refrigeration trucks. Based on the present state, if we end up in a place where we are unable to safely keep our morgues population down, and the reason I say this, the funeral directors aren't going to be able to hold these cadavers for an extended period of time, specifically because they're not going to be able to hold funeral services. On top of that, we might be dying at a rate, there might be people passing away at a rate greater than what our morgue levels can handle. So make sure you have a plan for extended morgue volume. Also, as we all know, the shrouds that we use for a lot of these decedents are not thick, and at the point of use, they will tear if you're grabbing that as using that as your glorified draw sheet. Consider always doubling for the short term your shrouds. So there's 2 shrouds for every decedent. In the long run, you'll be better off. And the other thing that you should consider doing is using a single patient use device, whether it be a repositioning sleeves, whether it be air transfer devices, whatever it is, to put underneath that patient. If you run out of morgue space and you've got to start now moving these cadavers to another location, if you plan on leaving them on a stretcher, you now are down a stretcher, which we're all going to be short on. Therefore, you're possibly going to be using the shroud end or whatever they're on as the tool to store them. By placing them on a single patient use product, you then have access and have an ability to protect that decedent without having to tear into the shroud. We didn't have any questions, so I want to thank you very much for joining us. I apologize I did not film or record this properly the first time around. My contact information is at the bottom. If you'd like to talk to any of our speakers or other people here, please contact me. I can give you their contact information directly. And thank you for listening. Anything else we've got? Anything else I'm missing, guys? Wonderful.